The mahogany conference table at Sterling and Associates gleamed under the morning Denver sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. I watched from the back corner as Regional Director Rachel Winters stood confidently before the executive team, her red blazer pristine as she gestured toward the projection screen displaying quarterly growth charts. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. Our boutique consulting expansion, she announced with practiced authority, has exceeded all projections. The personalized client acquisition strategy one developed has brought in over $2.3 million in new contracts this quarter alone. Every word hit like a punch to the gut. Those were my strategies, my client relationships, my late-night proposals that had built those numbers. I could see David Morrison, our biggest client, nodding approvingly in the front row, the same client who'd specifically requested to work with me after I'd saved his company $800,000 with my innovative cost reduction analysis. Yet here was Rachel, claiming credit for the relationship I'd built from scratch. Rachel clicked to the next slide, showing client testimonials. My heart sank as I recognized quotes from emails clients had sent directly to me. Working with Rachel's team has transformed our operational efficiency, read one testimonial that originally praised my personal consultation work. She'd systematically replaced my name with Rachel's team in every single review. My phone buzzed silently against my leg. A text from an unknown number: that contract you signed last year, do you still have a copy? This is Linda Chen from HR. We need to talk immediately after this meeting. I've been reviewing some concerning discrepancies in project attribution. A slow smile crept across my face as I watched Rachel bask in applause that should have been mine. She had no idea that 6 months ago, when I'd started developing the client acquisition program, I'd done something she never expected. I'd legally protected myself. What she also didn't know was that 3 of our biggest clients had been calling me directly, asking why their primary consultant had suddenly become unavailable and why they were being transferred to management oversight. The irony was beautiful. While Rachel was up there claiming to be the mastermind behind client relationships, those very clients were growing increasingly frustrated with her inability to deliver the personalized service they'd come to expect from me. But I'd been patient, documenting every confused client call, every missed consultation, every time Rachel had to deflect technical questions she couldn't answer. 6 months earlier, the idea came to me during another frustrating client meeting where Sterling's cookie-cutter approach was losing us a potential $400,000 contract. Margaret Chen, CEO of TechFlow Solutions, had been blunt in her feedback: your competitors understand our industry. You're trying to sell us generic business advice wrapped in consulting jargon. That night in my Capitol Hill apartment, surrounded by market research and client profiles, I realized our firm needed a completely different strategy: personalized consulting packages that treated each client like a unique partnership rather than another billable hour. I spent the entire weekend developing what I called the industry-specific value architecture, a system that analyzed each client's sector, competition, and internal culture to create completely customized solutions. The breakthrough came when I realized that most consulting firms, including Sterling, were essentially selling the same 5 services with different packaging. But what if we could offer truly bespoke strategies? I created detailed frameworks for tech startups, manufacturing companies, healthcare organizations, and financial services, each with specific methodologies that addressed industry-unique challenges. I spent weeks testing my theories with smaller clients, offering free consultations to refine the approach. The results were extraordinary. Conversion rates jumped from 23% to 67%. Client satisfaction scores went from industry average to top percentile. But most importantly, clients began requesting longer-term contracts because they felt truly understood for the first time. But I'd learned from watching other ambitious employees get burned at Sterling. Just 6 months before my program development, I'd watched Thomas Martinez, a brilliant financial analyst, develop an innovative profit optimization model that saved the firm millions. Within 3 months, his direct supervisor had claimed credit, received a promotion, and Thomas was quietly reassigned to focus on his core competencies. He left Sterling 2 weeks later, and his innovations went with him. I wasn't going to make Thomas's mistake. That's when I reached out to Marcus Rivera, my law school friend who specialized in intellectual property and employment law. I met him at a downtown Denver cafe on a snowy Tuesday evening, spreading my program documentation across a corner table. Trex, he said, reviewing my methodology framework, this isn't just an employee suggestion, this is a comprehensive business system that could revolutionize consulting. You need to protect this before you share it with anyone. Marcus explained something I'd never heard of: a contributor partnership agreement. It was a legal document that established me as a co-developer and profit participant in any program I created, separate from my regular employment duties. The beauty was that Sterling's employee handbook had a clause that explicitly allowed such partnerships for innovative business development initiatives that exceed standard job responsibilities. Most employees don't know about this clause, Marcus explained, because HR doesn't advertise it. But it's there to protect the company from losing valuable innovators. If you can prove your program generates significant revenue beyond your normal duties, you can legally establish co-ownership. I spent the next week documenting everything: development timelines, testing results, client feedback, revenue projections, and detailed technical specifications. Marcus helped me draft the partnership agreement, ensuring it covered intellectual property rights, profit-sharing percentages, and protection against unauthorized use. The morning I pitched my client acquisition strategy to Rachel and the senior partners, I'd already filed the partnership paperwork with the Colorado Secretary of State and had it notarized. When the partners approved the program for implementation, I quietly presented the contributor agreement as part of the project documentation package. This just formalizes the innovative development process, I explained casually, and ensures proper attribution for any unique methodologies created outside standard consulting services. James Sterling barely glanced at it before signing. To him, it looked like standard paperwork. To me, it was a legal fortress protecting everything I'd built. Rachel signed as the supervising manager, which legally established her acknowledgement of my role as the program's creator. For 3 months, I watched my program succeed beyond anyone's wildest expectations. The industry-specific value architecture transformed how Sterling approached new clients. My personally developed frameworks were generating contracts 60% larger than our previous standard. Client retention rates jumped from 34% to 89%. Revenue from accounts using my methodology increased by 180%, but success has a way of attracting parasites. As the numbers climbed, Rachel began inserting herself into every client interaction. She started attending meetings I'd scheduled, introducing herself as the strategic oversight director. My detailed client profiles became collaborative assessments. The customized proposals I'd crafted became team-developed solutions. The most infuriating part was watching her stumble through technical questions she couldn't answer. During one particularly painful client call with Davidson Manufacturing, Rachel spent 10 minutes explaining a cost reduction strategy she clearly didn't understand, using terms incorrectly and making promises about deliverables that were impossible to achieve. I had to jump in and save the $600,000 contract, but by the end of the meeting, Rachel was positioning herself as the senior strategist who'd guided my implementation work. Within 4 months, my name had gradually disappeared from emails. Meeting invitations stopped coming to my inbox directly. Instead, Rachel would forward them with comments like, "Trexie will handle the technical components while I manage strategic direction." When clients asked to speak with me specifically, Rachel would intercept the calls and brief me on what they needed. The final betrayal came on a cold February morning when I discovered she'd applied for the senior director position, the exact role I'd been working toward for 2 years. Her application, which I glimpsed over her shoulder while she was printing in the copy room, claimed sole credit for developing innovative client acquisition methodologies that revolutionized Sterling's approach to personalized consulting services. She'd even attached client testimonials praising my work, with my name carefully edited out and replaced with the leadership team or strategic management. Every breakthrough I'd achieved, every late night I'd spent perfecting the frameworks, every client relationship I'd built, all attributed to her visionary leadership. That's when I realized it was time to remind everyone exactly who really owned what. But I wasn't going to fight dirty like Rachel. I was going to fight smart. The next morning, I sat across from Linda Chen in HR's private conference room, a manila folder thick with documents spread between us. Linda's expression grew more serious with each page she examined: client contracts, development timelines, email threads, and most importantly, the notarized contributor partnership agreement bearing the signatures of Sterling's senior leadership. "Trexie," she said carefully, "according to this partnership agreement, you're legally entitled to co-ownership and profit sharing on the client acquisition program. The senior partners signed this 6 months ago, acknowledging you as the sole developer of what they're calling revolutionary consulting methodologies." I nodded calmly, sliding another document across the table. "This is Rachel's promotion application. Notice how she claims to have pioneered and architected every system I developed. She's also listed herself as the primary contact for all major clients who've been calling me directly asking why they can't reach their usual consultant." Linda's eyebrows raised as she reviewed client testimonials, noting how the original emails praising my work had been systematically edited to remove my name. Rachel submitted her promotion application yesterday, taking full credit for a 40% increase in firm revenue. She's positioned herself as the sole architect of this success, but these documents tell a completely different story. There's more, I said, opening my laptop. I've been documenting every interaction since I noticed the credit theft beginning. Watch this. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. I played a recording from my phone, a client call from 2 weeks ago where Davidson Manufacturing's CEO specifically asked to speak with me about expanding their contract, only to have Rachel intercept and claim she was the strategic lead on their account. You could hear the confusion in the client's voice as Rachel stumbled through technical questions about cost optimization models she clearly didn't understand. The client specifically requested me because I'd saved them $800,000. With a customized efficiency analysis, I explained. Rachel had no idea what they were talking about, but she kept redirecting the conversation to high-level strategic oversight instead of the technical solutions they actually needed. What Linda didn't know was that I'd spent the last 2 months building something Rachel couldn't steal: independence. While she focused on taking credit for my existing work, I'd been quietly developing phase 2 of my methodology, an advanced client retention and expansion system that could potentially triple long-term contract values, but this time, I wasn't sharing it with Sterling first. I'd been consulting with 3 competing firms, including Morrison Consulting Group and Pinnacle Strategic Solutions, all eager to license my expanded approach. If Rachel wanted to steal my past work, she'd find herself managing a program with no future development. While I took my real innovations elsewhere, the most satisfying part was watching Rachel prepare for her promotion interview, rehearsing presentations about methodologies she didn't understand. I'd seen her in the conference room after hours, practicing explanations of client psychology frameworks and industry-specific analysis techniques she'd never actually used. She was memorizing my work like lines in a play, but she had no idea how to handle the inevitable technical questions that would come. I've also been building relationships Rachel doesn't know about, I continued, showing Linda a folder of client communications. Remember, my original methodology focuses on deep industry specialization. I've been developing sector-specific innovations that go far beyond what Sterling currently offers. I pulled out letters of intent from 4 major corporations, each expressing interest in consulting partnerships that would require my personal oversight. TechFlow Solutions wants to expand our contract to include their 3 subsidiary companies. Davidson Manufacturing is looking at a $2.2 million strategic overhaul. Pinnacle Healthcare is requesting exclusive access to my healthcare consulting frameworks. Linda's eyes widened as she read the numbers. These contracts would represent the largest deals in Sterling's history. Exactly. And every single one is contingent on my direct involvement. Rachel can claim credit for my past work, but she can't deliver the future innovations these clients are actually paying for. The beauty was in the timing. Rachel's promotion interview was scheduled for Friday, where she'd present her strategy to the board of directors. She'd been preparing for days, rehearsing presentations about methodologies she didn't understand, unable to answer the technical questions that would inevitably come. But I had something even better planned. What do you want to do about this? Linda asked, closing the folder with a thoughtful expression. I smiled, thinking of the partnership offer sitting in my email from Morrison Consulting Group, Sterling's biggest competitor. I want to attend Rachel's promotion presentation. As the legal co-owner of the program she's claiming, I think I have a right to be there. But I also want to make a counterproposal to the executive team. Linda's eyes narrowed with understanding. What kind of counterproposal? I pulled out one final document, a comprehensive expansion plan that would transform Sterling from a regional consulting firm into a national industry leader. Phase 2 of my methodology isn't just about client acquisition, it's about client evolution. Instead of selling consulting services, we'd be selling business transformation partnerships. The revenue potential is 10 times what we're currently generating. The plan detailed everything: AI-integrated analysis tools, predictive market modeling, cross-industry knowledge transfer systems, and long-term partnership structures that would make clients dependent on our continued innovation rather than just our advice. The catch, I continued, it requires acknowledging me as the original program developer, establishing proper revenue-sharing agreements, and giving me the autonomy to build a specialized team without managerial interference. Linda reviewed the financial projections, her expression shifting from surprise to genuine excitement. Trexie, this could make Sterling the dominant consulting firm in the Rocky Mountain region. Maybe even nationally. I know, I said simply. I've been developing this for months while Rachel was busy stealing credit for phase 1. The question is whether Sterling wants to keep playing politics or start playing to win. That afternoon, I submitted my internal partnership proposal to Sterling's executive team, a comprehensive expansion that could potentially bring in $15 million in new business over the next 2 years. The documentation was flawless: legal protections, technical specifications, client testimonials, and revenue guarantees that would make any executive salivate. I didn't tell Rachel about the proposal. I didn't mention the legal documentation waiting in HR. I didn't hint that her carefully constructed narrative was about to collide with documented reality and powerful client relationships she'd never actually built. Instead, I simply waited, knowing that in 2 days, when she stood before the executive board claiming ownership of my work, she'd discover that stealing credit is easy, but stealing capability is impossible. The best part? While she'd been focused on taking credit for what I'd already built, I'd been building something so much bigger that her theft would look like stealing pocket change while missing the bank vault. Friday couldn't come fast enough. Friday morning arrived with typical Denver sunshine streaming through Sterling and Associates' panoramic windows. The boardroom buzzed with anticipation as Rachel took her position at the head of the polished conference table, surrounded by senior partners, division heads, and key stakeholders who would determine her promotion to senior director. "Ladies and gentlemen," Rachel began, her voice carrying the rehearsed confidence of someone who'd practiced this moment dozens of times. "The client acquisition methodology I developed has not only exceeded our targets but positioned Sterling as an industry leader in personalized consulting services." I sat quietly in the back corner, watching as she clicked through slides I recognized, modified versions of my original presentations, with her name replacing mine in every credit line. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Morrison Consulting Group and 2 voicemails from TechFlow Solutions. They were all waiting for answers about partnerships that could reshape my entire career. Rachel advanced to her financial projection slide, highlighting how her methodology had generated the firm's most profitable quarter in 5 years. She detailed the increased client satisfaction scores, the improved retention rates, and the revolutionary approach to industry-specific consulting that had set Sterling apart from competitors. Senior partner James Sterling leaned forward, clearly impressed. "Rachel, walk us through the technical components of this approach. How exactly does your framework adapt to different industry requirements?" I watched Rachel's confidence flicker for just a moment. This was the question I'd been waiting for, the one that would expose the difference between memorizing my work and actually understanding it. "Well," Rachel began, her voice slightly less certain, "the framework utilizes comprehensive analysis protocols that integrate cross-sectoral, strategic implementations." She was using buzzwords without substance, stringing together consulting jargon that sounded impressive but meant nothing. Division head Patricia Reeves frowned. "Could you be more specific? We have several manufacturing clients asking about cost optimization models. How would your methodology address their particular challenges?" Rachel's face flushed slightly as she fumbled through her notes. "The approach is highly adaptable. We use strategic oversight to implement industry-relevant solutions that maximize operational efficiency." That's when Linda Chen entered the room, carrying a thick folder and wearing the expression of someone about to drop a nuclear bomb on a garden party. "I apologize for the interruption," Linda announced, her voice cutting through Rachel's stammering, "but there's been a significant legal matter brought to my attention that directly relates to this presentation." The room fell silent. Rachel's polished confidence evaporated completely as Linda placed the folder on the table and opened it with deliberate precision. "6 months ago, Ms. Trexie Smith filed a contributor partnership agreement for the client acquisition program being discussed today. This agreement, signed by senior leadership, establishes Ms. Smith as the legal co-owner and original developer of the methodology currently being attributed to Ms. Winters." The color drained from Rachel's face as Linda continued reading from the documents. "Original client emails praising my work, development timelines showing my sole authorship, technical specifications that proved my expertise, all bearing dates that predated Rachel's involvement by months." James Sterling's voice cut through the stunned silence. "Trexie, would you please join us at the table?" I rose slowly, feeling the weight of every eye in the room shift from Rachel's crumbling presentation to my calm approach to the front of the room. As I walked forward, I could see Rachel's carefully constructed narrative collapsing in real time, her stolen promotion slipping away with each step I took. "The partnership agreement is clear," I said, placing my own folder on the table as I took a seat directly across from Rachel. "I developed this methodology independently, filed the proper legal protections, and have documentation proving sole authorship of every component Rachel just presented." But I wasn't finished. This was my moment, not just to reclaim credit, But to show what real innovation looked like, I opened my laptop and connected to the room's display system. What Rachel doesn't know is that her presentation only covers phase 1 of my methodology. Phase 2, which could potentially transform Sterling into a national consulting powerhouse, was never shared with the firm. The screen filled with advanced frameworks I'd spent months developing in secret: predictive client analysis algorithms, AI-integrated consultation tools, cross-industry knowledge transfer systems, and partnership structures that would make clients dependent on continued innovation, rather than just advice. Jaws dropped around the table as they realized they were looking at the future of consulting. These frameworks, I continued, clicking through detailed revenue projections, could generate $15 to $20 million in new business over the next 2 years. I've already received letters of intent from TechFlow Solutions, Davidson Manufacturing, and Pinnacle Healthcare, representing over $4 million in immediate contracts contingent on my direct involvement. Patricia Reeves was staring at the screen with undisguised amazement. Trexie, this is revolutionary. These partnership models could redefine how consulting firms operate. I smiled, clicking to a slide showing interest from Morrison Consulting Group and 2 other major firms. Morrison has offered me a senior partnership to implement this complete system with them. Pinnacle Strategic wants to license the methodology exclusively for the West Coast market. But I wanted to give Sterling the opportunity to honor the original agreement first. Rachel finally found her voice, but it came out as a desperate whisper that carried no authority. Trexie, we can work together on this. I never meant to minimize your contributions. I met her eyes with a look that held no warmth, no forgiveness, and no patience for lies. Partnership requires trust, Rachel. You chose to steal credit instead of earn it. You've spent months claiming ownership of work you didn't understand, taking credit for relationships you didn't build, and applying for promotions based on innovations you couldn't explain. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioning and Rachel's barely audible breathing. I could see the calculations happening behind every executive's eyes. They were looking at potentially losing millions in revenue and revolutionary innovations if I walked away to join a competitor. James Sterling leaned back in his chair, the situation now crystal clear. Ms. Smith, what would it take for Sterling to retain your services and this expanded methodology? I had prepared for this moment for months, consulting with Marcus about employment law, researching industry standards, and building leverage that would make my demands impossible to refuse. Full recognition as Senior Director of Strategic Innovation, a 20% equity stake in the consulting division, complete autonomy to build and lead my specialized team, and Rachel's immediate removal from any role involving my programs or client relationships. The financial stakes were too high for hesitation. Patricia Reeves was already calculating the numbers. Furthermore, I added, I'll need a public correction of the record regarding the program's actual development, a company-wide policy protecting employee intellectual property, and a guarantee that future innovations will be properly attributed to their creators. Rachel sat frozen, watching her stolen promotion and manufactured reputation crumble in real time. She had built her career advancement on lies, and now those lies were collapsing under the weight of documented truth, legal protection, and innovations she could never replicate. There's one more thing, I said, clicking to a final slide that showed a timeline of Rachel's systematic credit theft. I've documented every instance of misattribution, every client relationship she claimed without authorization, and every meeting where she presented my work as her own. This pattern of intellectual property theft creates serious liability issues for the firm. The threat was clear: Sterling could either make this right internally, or risk a lawsuit that would expose their failure to protect employee innovations while potentially losing their most valuable consulting methodologies to competitors. 25 minutes later, I walked out of Sterling and Associates as their new Senior Director of Strategic Innovation, with a signed agreement that made me one of the youngest equity partners in the firm's history and gave me complete control over the consulting divisions. Future direction. Rachel's resignation letter was submitted before I reached the parking garage. That evening, I sat in my favorite coffee shop in downtown Denver, laptop open to a flood of congratulatory messages and partnership inquiries. Word had spread quickly through the consulting industry. The story of the employee who legally protected her innovations and turned career sabotage into executive leadership was making rounds in professional circles nationwide. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus Rivera, heard through the legal grapevine that Sterling just made you an equity partner. That contributor partnership agreement was the best investment advice I ever gave. Drinks to celebrate? I smiled, thinking about Rachel's final desperate expression as her stolen promotion slipped away and her manufactured success collapsed. She had taught me the most valuable lesson of my career: in business, documentation beats reputation, legal protection trumps office politics, and the best revenge isn't getting even, it's becoming untouchable, but the real satisfaction wasn't in Rachel's downfall. It was in the email I'd received an hour earlier from TechFlow Solutions. We're ready to sign the expanded partnership agreement. When can we start implementation of Phase 2? The next morning, Sterling and Associates announced their new senior director of strategic innovation and the launch of an industry-leading consulting methodology that would reshape how firms approach client relationships. The press release, which I personally reviewed before publication, included a detailed correction acknowledging my role as the original developer of their breakthrough client acquisition system. My new nameplate arrived that afternoon: Trexie Smith, Senior Director of Strategic Innovation and Equity Partner. For the first time in months, it felt like the recognition actually belonged to me, but the best part came a week later, when I received a LinkedIn message from Thomas Martinez, the financial analyst who'd been pushed out 6 months before my own experience began. Saw the news about your promotion. Congratulations on showing them how it's done right. Maybe it's time I came back to Sterling, as your client. The revolution had begun, and this time, innovation would be protected. 3 months later, I stood in Sterling's newly renovated Strategic Innovation Center, a 5,000 square foot space dedicated entirely to my expanding team and cutting-edge consulting methodologies. The wall-mounted screens displayed real-time data from 17 major client implementations across 6 states, each one generating revenue that exceeded our most optimistic projections. My team had grown from just me to 12 specialists, industry experts, data scientists, relationship managers, and innovation coordinators who understood that genuine consulting meant building long-term partnerships rather than selling quick fixes. We'd poached talent from 3 major competitors, including 2 senior analysts from Morrison Consulting who'd specifically requested to work under my leadership. The numbers were staggering. In just 90 days, my Phase 2 implementations had generated $8.2 million in new contracts, with another $12 million in pipeline opportunities for the next quarter. TechFlow Solutions had expanded their partnership to include all 3 subsidiary companies. Davidson Manufacturing's strategic overhaul had saved them $1.3 million in operational costs while increasing production efficiency by 34%. Pinnacle Healthcare had become our largest client, signing an exclusive 3-year agreement worth $4.50 million. But the real validation came from an unexpected source. Trexie, James Sterling said, joining me at the window overlooking downtown Denver, I owe you an apology. When you first presented your contributor partnership agreement, I thought it was just another ambitious employee trying to secure job protection. I never imagined you were sitting on innovations that would transform our entire business model.